Welcome back to the deep dive.
Hey there. Glad to be back.
Yeah, so today we are taking a stack of sources, articles, interview transcripts, historical notes, and we are unpacking a story that completely rewrites the script on a topic we think we know.
Right. The whole concept of immigration enforcement in the American dream.
Exactly. I mean, usually when we talk about immigration enforcement, La Migra, it is a story of fear.
Oh, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
almost always framed as a binary.
Right. The agents in the green vans versus the people hiding in the fields, the hunter and the hunted.
That's the classic narrative, yeah.
But today's deep dive is about a woman who just completely collapsed that binary.
It is a story that sits right at this crazy intersection of grand history and extreme personal trauma. We are looking at what happens when the hunted decides to put on the badge.
Yeah, we are talking about Jenny Rodriguez.
And let me tell you, this woman is a character. I mean, she describes herself as a cascabel.
A rattlesnake, right?
A rattlesnake who crawled out from under a rock to survive. And she isn't using that as a metaphor for being mean or venomous. She's using it as a metaphor for just raw, extreme resilience.
She had to be tough.
Oh, she is tough. She is hilarious, and she is incredibly effective.
Before we launch into the timeline, though, I want to be very specific about where this incredible story comes from for you listening. Today's deep dive is based entirely on a fascinating conversation from the video, episodio 6, La historia que nunca imaginaste, el viaje de resiliencia de Jenny Rodriguez.
Right, and that is from the channel Sabiduría Para Tu Día, Wisdom for Your Day, hosted by Álvaro Martínez.
And that source is so key because Álvaro, the interviewer, isn't just some random journalist.
No, not at all. He knew Jenny when he was a child. He grew up watching her on TV as the quote-unquote voice of immigration in the Central Valley.
He views her as a mentor.
Exactly. So the conversation we are analyzing today isn't a formal stiff interview. It is this intimate, raw exchange between a mentor and a mentee. The wall that usually exists between a subject and an interviewer is completely gone.
Which is why we get such amazing detail. So here is our mission for this deep dive. We want to unpack the life of a champion of change.
Yes.
We want to explore how extreme childhood trauma, and I mean extreme, can forge a change agent rather than a victim.
It is a profound psychological pivot.
And finally, we want to understand Jenny's specific brand of tough love community activism. Because as you will see today, she didn't coddle anyone.
No, she certainly didn't.
Yeah.
And historically, for you listening, we are going to be talking a lot about the 1986 Immigration Reform and Control Act.
The amnesty under Reagan.
Right. This was a pivotal moment in U.S. history, and Jenny became the bridge between a terrified community of farm workers and the federal government.
But to understand the woman who built that bridge, we really have to start with the girl who hid under it.
That is a great way to put it.
Let's start with Section 1, the snake under the rock. Jenny was born in Fresno, California in 1951, but her story really begins with this heartbreaking split in her childhood.
Yeah, she talks about her first 5 years as being almost perfect.
She was placed in a foster home with the Moreno family.
And she emphasizes this heavily in the source material. She says that for 5 years, she had love, stability, and affection. She calls it her foundation.
Psychologically, that is so important.
It is everything. Even though what comes next is horrific, she had a baseline of what love felt like. She knew it existed. It gave her a reference point that many trauma survivors unfortunately lack.
But then the trauma begins. She is 5 years old. She remembers standing in the doorframe of the foster home, screaming as a man and a woman she didn't know dragged her out of the house and shoved her into a car.
Those were her biological parents reclaiming her.
And this introduces us to the central antagonist of her early life, her father.
Yeah, let's unpack this man because he sounds like a villain from a Western movie, but he was very real.
He was born in 1899.
Right. Jenny keeps saying he was a man of a different century, which I think is her polite way of saying his values were archaic and his morality was non-existent.
She describes him as having the devil in his eyes.
He wasn't just strict, he was evil. He was a professional gambler. He used loaded dice-marked cards.
A grifter, basically.
Totally. He would disappear for weeks at a time to underground gambling rings up in Oregon or Washington.
And when he was home, it was an absolute nightmare. Caught in the middle of this is Jenny's mother, Felipa.
She is such a tragic figure in this narrative.
She had contracted tuberculosis from breathing in pecan shell dust while working in Texas.
Think about that. The physical toll of that labor. She was missing a lung. She was incredibly weak physically and just completely unable to protect her children from this man.
The death of her mother is one of those moments that just stops you cold when you read the transcript. It is January 2nd, 1958. Jenny is only 6 years old.
The night before, There's a bully in the labor camp beating up Jenny's older brother.
And her mother is so stressed watching this, but she is too weak to intervene.
The stress literally caused a massive heart attack.
And Jenny is the one who finds her body in the morning.
A 6-year-old girl waking up her siblings to tell them their mother is gone.
That is the effective end of her childhood right there.
Without a doubt. And immediately after this, the father brings in a stepmother, but the abuse escalates.
And we aren't talking about spankings here. We are talking about torture.
Jenny describes being burned. She describes her older half-brothers, and these are grown men in their 20s and 30s, holding her underwater until she nearly drowned.
This is where I want to pause and look at the coping mechanism she developed. She talks about being held underwater, running out of air, and instead of panicking, she would tell herself internally, okay, be calm, relax.
She was dissociating.
Exactly. It is a radical form of compartmentalization.
She separated her consciousness from her biology. She looked at herself almost as a third party.
She says she felt sorry for that little girl who was suffering, but she didn't view it as her suffering.
She viewed herself as a separate entity that just had to survive the moment. That ability to step back and observe rather than just feel is a skill that serves her later in life. But man, it was forged in absolute trauma.
It is chilling, but it makes sense. It is how she became the cascabel, the rattlesnake. She had to harden herself.
But the abuse at home was only half the battle. The other half was the grueling labor in the fields.
Which brings us to Section 2, the migrant trail and the street rat.
They were on the circuit, moving constantly between Texas, Arizona, Oregon, Washington, California.
Picking cotton potatoes beats walnuts. If it grew in the dirt, Jenny picked it.
And Jenny talks specifically about the short hoe El Cortito.
For you listening who don't know agricultural history, this was a farming tool with a handle only about 12 to 18 inches long.
To use it, you had to be bent over at the waist all day long.
Growers preferred it because it forced the worker to be close to the crop. You couldn't damage the lettuce, and you couldn't slack off without it being painfully obvious.
It was a tool of control, plain and simple. It destroyed workers' backs and was eventually banned in California in 1975 after a massive legal battle.
But Jenny, she describes herself as a hare. She was competitive, she was fast, she took pride in beating the men in the fields.
Even in this oppressive system, she found a way to be the best at it.
But the cost was her education. She would be pulled out of school in May and wouldn't return until late September.
She was constantly missing credits. And the irony is she loved school.
School was the escape. It was the only place where she wasn't a worker or a victim. She was just a student.
But the system wasn't built for migrant kids back then. She rarely finished a grade. And yet, she was naturally brilliant. She mentions absorbing English faster than the other kids, just soaking it up.
So you have the fields by day, abuse by night. What does a 7-year-old do?
She runs.
Jenny became what the county called a habitual runaway. Imagine a 7 or 8-year-old girl living on the streets to escape her own father.
Sleeping in ditches, under bushes, in strangers' garages.
He talks about eating out of garbage cans.
She knew which cans had the discarded fruit or meat. She tells this one anecdote about scavenging glass bottles to sell for pennies.
She collected enough to buy a popcorn ball. That was her meal.
There is a fascinating inversion of safety here, though. She talks about juvenile hall.
Right, for most kids, juvie is a threat.
For Jenny, it was a sanctuary. She says she liked juvenile hall because they gave her milk, eggs, and bacon.
Her father never bought those things. They only ate beans and potatoes.
Think about what that says about her home life. Incarceration was an upgrade because it provided basic nutrition and a lack of physical torture.
She would actually cry when they sent her back home.
There is that incredible story about the police station. She is sleeping under a bush near a police station in Clovis or Easton.
It is freezing cold. She's a tiny little thing. At 4 a.m., she just walks into the station.
Imagine the scene. 2 cops talking, drinking coffee.
Yeah.
And in walks this dirty, freezing little girl who just asks, "Can you take me to juvenile hall, please?"
She was navigating bureaucratic systems for survival before she was even 10 years old.
That is a brilliant observation. She was already learning that institutions, no matter how cold, were safer than the chaos of her father.
That foreshadows her entire career.
It really does. So let's fast forward. She is surviving. She is running away. She is coming back.
Section 3, breaking free. She is 17 years old. The year is 1968. She is still under her father's thumb.
He sends her to a gas station to buy cigarettes. And there she meets a young man.
This wasn't just a meet cute. This was high stakes.
She realizes that if her father finds out she's even talking to a boy, he might literally kill her. Remember, the rumor in the family was that he had killed a man in Texas.
So the romance is accelerated by the threat of death. She essentially has to choose run with this boy or risk her life staying.
She flees the house while her father is literally chasing her down the street.
They run to Yuma, Arizona, then cross into Winter Haven, California to get married to avoid the blood tests and waiting periods.
I want to point out from the source that this marriage wasn't just about young love. It was a survival strategy.
It was the only exit ramp available to her at that time.
Exactly. But eventually they divorce amicably after 10 years. And here is where Jenny reinvents herself yet again. She decides she needs an education to support her 3 daughters.
This is honestly one of my favorite parts of her entire story. She walks into Fresno State University. Now keep in mind, she barely finished the 6th grade.
She has no high school diploma. She has no GED.
And the administration looks at her and says, "Okay, we will put you in remedial classes."
And Jenny says no.
She tells them, "Send for my records." She knew that whenever she was actually in school, she was a straight-A student.
She basically bluffed her way in demanding they judge her on her potential, not her paperwork.
And she backed it up. She graduated in 1986 magna cum laude and was named Outstanding Student of the Year in Sociology.
It is more than confidence. It is a refusal to accept the label that society put on her. Society said dropout migrant worker. She said scholar.
And she forced the institution to agree with her.
Which is incredible.
No.
So 1986, she graduates. And this brings us to Section 4, the 1986 amnesty.
This is the pivot point where Jenny goes from surviving the system to running it.
Right. President Reagan signs the Immigration Reform and Control Act, or IRCA. This is a massive historical moment.
It offered a path to legalization for millions of undocumented immigrants who had been in the country since before 1982.
Jenny starts working for the unemployment office, the EDD, first because she loved translating for the dirty, tired farm workers. But then she gets recruited by the INS, the Immigration and Naturalization Service.
The irony is just palpable here. Her family ran from the INS in the fields. Now she's wearing the badge.
She talks about her conflict with this, but she realized that if she was on the inside, she could actually help.
And she had a fascinating boss, a German supervisor named Darwin, whom she affectionately called Cara de Limon, Lemon Face.
I love that detail, lemon face. He was strict, he rarely smiled, but Jenny says he had a good heart.
And he empowered her. He recognized that the standard government approach wasn't going to work here.
The government usually sits in a sterile office and waits for people to come to them. But the farm workers were terrified of the INS. They weren't going to just walk into the federal building.
So Jenny became the face of amnesty in the Central Valley.
She went on a massive outreach tour. She went to churches, schools, labor camps, and she went at night after the workers were done in the fields.
And her style. She wasn't soft. Álvaro, the host of the Source video, remembers her being on TV. She would scold people.
Oh, yeah. If they were late to the meeting, she would let them have it. She would say, "I'm here to help you pay attention."
It was tough love. But it was effective because it was authentic. She wasn't a bureaucrat reading a script.
She was one of them. She spoke their language, not just Spanish, but the language of the field.
And she stayed until 10 p.m. answering every single question. Her radio fame was huge, too. She'd be on Channel 21 at 6 a.m.
And the results speak for themselves. The Fresno office became the #1 or #2 office in the entire nation for processing amnesty applications.
That wasn't an accident. That was Jenny.
It shows that policy is only as good as its implementation. You can pass a grand law in Washington, but if you don't have a Jenny Rodriguez in Fresno explaining it to the people in the dirt, the law means nothing.
But it wasn't just about explaining the law. She had to fight the predators. Which brings us to Section 5, the vigilante bureaucrat.
Yes. The notarios.
In many Latin American countries, a notario publico is a highly trained legal professional like a super lawyer.
But in the U.S., a notary public is just someone who witnesses signatures. So scammers would set up shop, calling themselves notarios, implying they were lawyers.
They would charge farm workers exorbitant fees, thousands of dollars, to fill out forms that were literally free.
Or worse, they would mess up the paperwork and get people deported.
Jenny hated these people with a burning passion. She tells stories of farm workers coming to her office crying because they had been scammed out of their life savings.
So what does she do? She picks up the phone from her government office and calls the scammer directly.
She would say, "I am Jenny Rodriguez from the INS. I have your client here. If you don't refund this money right now, I am taking all your files to headquarters in Laguna Niguel, and we are going to audit you."
She threatened them with the full weight of the federal government. She used her government car and time to drive around and hunt down fraud.
She admits she often did this without official permission. Her motto was, "Ask for forgiveness, not permission," but her boss, Lemonface, backed her up because He knew it was the right thing to do.
She was like a superhero for bureaucracy. But she also demanded a lot from the community itself. She had this fish card philosophy.
She handed out cards with a fish symbol. The quote was, "I'm not giving you a fish. I am teaching you to fish."
She refused to fill out forms for people if they had educated children.
She would say, "Don't bring me this. Go home. Make your son or daughter do it. They speak English. They need to help you."
This is a controversial stance for some, but for Jenny, it was entirely about empowerment. She wanted to break the dependency on paid consultants.
She wanted the community to realize they had the capacity to navigate the system themselves. She was forcing the younger generation to step up and serve their parents.
It goes right back to that tough love. She wasn't there to save them. She was there to make sure they could save themselves.
Which leads perfectly into her broader philosophy on life. Section 6, the cup and the boat.
These metaphors are so simple but so profound when you apply them. After the INS, she worked for UC Davis doing health and safety for farm workers.
And then the Department of Labor in the Wage and Hour Division investigating farmers who didn't pay minimum wage.
But she eventually left the Department of Labor because they lost sight of the mission. They wanted big money cases, casinos, hotels. Jenny wanted to help the farm worker who was owed $40.
That $40 meant groceries for the week. To the government, it was a rounding error. To Jenny, it was justice.
That misalignment of values pushed her back to immigration services where she felt she could do more direct good.
So let's talk about her core philosophies. First, the change agent.
It is a sociology term, but she lived it. It means you must actively work to change your environment, not just exist in it.
And then her first self-love metaphor, the cup. She says you must fill your own cup first.
It sounds like a cliche until she explains the mechanics of it. She says the liquid in the cup is for you. You only give others the overflow, the foam, the cream that spills over the top.
If you give from the bottom of the cup, you deplete yourself. You run dry.
Exactly. It is not selfishness, it is sustainability. If you are an activist, a mother, a social worker, you cannot give what you do not have.
And then there is the boat. She says a boat is surrounded by water, which represents negativity, bad influences, trauma.
But the boat only sinks if you let the water in.
You have to keep your hull sealed. You can be in the middle of a storm, like her childhood was a horrific storm, but as long as you don't internalize it, as long as you don't let that water inside your boat, you stay afloat.
It is brilliant. She also redefines the word sencilla. In Spanish, this usually means humble or simple. Often it implies being meek or unassuming.
Jenny rejects that entirely. She says sencilla means authentic. It means being genuine.
It doesn't mean you're weak. It means you are exactly who you say you are without pretense.
She is definitely who she says she is. And that brings us to the present day. Section 7, modern Jenny.
Jenny is retired now, but she hasn't stopped. She collects donations, closed toys for the labor camps.
But here's the detail that absolutely killed me. She washes and sorts everything personally before handing it out.
Yes. She demands dignity for the recipients. She won't hand out dirty or torn clothes. She says, "Don't give me your trash."
She washes it, folds it, sanitizes it.
Yeah.
Because the person receiving it deserves respect. That is the essence of Jenny Rodriguez.
It is not just charity, it is solidarity.
And we have to touch on her views on the current state of things. The source video covers this, and as always, we are just impartially reporting what is in the source.
Right. She watches the Mexican presidential Mañanera briefings daily.
She expresses a lot of admiration for the shifts in Mexican politics, particularly the empowerment of women like Claudia Sheinbaum.
She sees a pride and heritage there that she wishes more Mexican Americans would embrace.
She talks about how she felt shame as a child being called a dirty Mexican, having rocks thrown at her.
Now she says the armor against that shame is history. Knowing about the Mayas, the Olmecs, the invention of the zero astronomy.
She says pride in your roots is what allows you to stand up and not live on your knees. It is cultural pride as a form of psychological defense.
She also expresses criticism of the current U.S. political climate regarding immigration. She compares the rhetoric today to the green van raids of her youth.
But she remains incredibly hopeful. She thinks there might be another amnesty coming, maybe for dreamers or farm workers, because the economy depends on them.
It is a pragmatic hope. She knows the system is cynical, but she also knows this system needs labor.
So what is her legacy? When asked how she wants to be remembered, she just says, as someone honest.
And her final call to the listeners in that video is pure Jenny. She says, "Call me and tell me you helped yourself."
She doesn't want you to call and thank her. She wants you to call and say, I did it. I filled out the form. I fought for my rights.
That is the ultimate goal of a change agent. To make yourself obsolete because the people don't need you anymore.
Precisely. So let's synthesize this journey. We have gone from a little girl eating popcorn balls bought with scavenged bottles to a woman who helped thousands of people achieve the American dream.
It is a journey from survival to advocacy. Resilience isn't just about enduring pain. It is about metabolizing that pain and turning it into fuel to help others.
Jenny didn't just survive the snake pit, she became the snake so she could bite back at the injustice.
That is a powerful image. And it leads us to our final thought for you, the listener. Jenny mentioned that faith without action is a myth.
You can believe things will get better, but if you don't move, nothing changes.
So here's the question for you to mull over. What is the broken part of your community that you are waiting for someone else to fix?
Because if Jenny's story tells us anything, it is that no one is coming to save you. You might be the change agent you have been waiting for.
That is the challenge. And listen, we barely scratched the surface of Jenny's personality today. You really need to hear her voice, her laugh, and yes, her scolding.
You really do. So here is the mandatory call to action, and trust me, it is worth it. Don't miss the full story on the podcast, Sabiduría Para Tu Día with Álvaro Martínez on Spotify and YouTube. Go watch the video. See the fire in her eyes.
It is a history lesson you simply will not find in textbooks.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We will see you next time.
Take care.
And remember, fill your own cup first.